I'd like to pass it over to Dr. Mel Spence, who is going to talk to us today about the best ways to support students with autism. Correct, Dr. Spence?
Yeah, twice exceptional, gifted students with autism. Yeah.
Gotcha. So go ahead and I'll get out of your way.
Perfect. It's so awesome to be here with everyone today. I'm Dr. Mel Spence. I'm Assistant Dean of Assessment and Accreditation at Cal Lutheran University, which sounds much more exciting than it actually is. I am here to talk to you today about a grant that I am working on through the Department of Ed. So it's the Project for the Advancement of Gifted and Exceptional Students, or PAGES as we call it, since we love our acronyms. And I'm supposed to be joined today with one of my high school teachers who's working with us on the grant. He's one of our grant participants, but he is unexpectedly sick. So I actually did get a recording from another high school teacher that I will be sharing a little later during this presentation. But I need to do a shout out to my other components of our research team, two Amy's who work within LA Unified, who are my main contacts with the district. As you can imagine, it is really hard to work within LA Unified because it's a behemoth of a school district in which to work in. So we really wanted to work on this project because of the underrepresentation that we see in our gifted students, those students who are identified as gifted, particularly our students with disabilities. So this huge underrepresentation of their students with disabilities, our students with autism, or twice exceptional students who'd be identified as gifted. And within LA Unified, the problem is even more magnified, right? So on the left is LA Unified's statistics for student population, and then the number of students who are thus identified as gifted. So there's a huge underrepresentation and some overrepresentation in our white and Asian student population. So looking at this data, we were like, we really need to kind of rethink who we are identifying as gifted, what gifted is actually meaning in terms of student or teachers understanding who they should identify, and how can we best support teachers in not only identification, but also once they are identified, how we instruct them, right? Especially our twice exceptional, because they have dual instructional needs. So they have the needs of the disability to be contended with in terms of instruction, and they also have the needs of being identified as gifted. So what we recognize is that part of the identification issue really is an instructional fit. If we don't match our instruction as teachers to fit the needs of these students, then we're never really going to see the giftedness to begin with. Right. So if we're constantly focused on redirecting behavioral challenges or seemingly unmotivation, then we're not going to see the giftedness where the giftedness lies. And thus we are missing a whole segment of our population. So our grant and our project is really focused on these 5 needs of this twice exceptional population. Right? We have a huge focus on non-academic challenges because this is a huge barrier to future success, right? So working on social emotional learning and executive functions. Mismatch of instructional needs in terms of, are we actually targeting our instruction in a way that is meeting the needs of both the disability and the giftedness? And then targeting the really dismal numbers of post-secondary success with this population. Our gifted population, especially our 2E population, is floundering in post-secondary environments, right? The job market is not good for them. They are not doing well in college because of all of those like soft skills and executive function skills that are necessary to navigate a complicated college environment. Self-advocacy and self-efficacy are 2 other huge areas. So our 5 main goals is surrounding those 5 challenges. So we're providing a lot of professional development and how to incorporate social emotional learning instruction and targeted executive function instruction within both in elementary environments as well as secondary environments. And we're also doing coaching in how to identify outside of those challenging behaviors and lack of social skills. See, we're also working on how to teach that self-efficacy, self-management, self-advocacy, all those skills. So there's a smoother transition to the college environment. So we have two main groups of teachers that we're working with. So really targeting how to identify identification challenges in elementary school and how to really hone our instructional ability in 6th through 12th grade so they're better prepared for college. I don't think I mentioned that we're in year 6 of this project. So we're in our last and final year. And I apologize, I am a mother and my kids just got home from school. So if you hear anything in the background, it is my lovely offspring. We are focused on, with our social emotional learning, teaching from the CACEC framework and instructing with that. So working on self-management and self-awareness before we target anything else. For you cannot manage without being self-aware of your emotions. And we're working with teachers on incorporating these 3 instructional frameworks within their classroom. So expected and unexpected behaviors, size of the problem, and zones of regulation. And you'd probably familiar, most of you are probably familiar with all of these. But instead of just giving them the tools like, hey, teach this, we're trying to also really infuse, how do you take these instructional frameworks and infuse it into your core curricular instruction? Because we know time is a problem. We can't just say, hey, take 20 minutes of your day to hit all of the social, emotional, and executive functioning instruction. And then you can go back and do all of your A through G requirements, right? All of your content specific stuff that you need to do in 6th through 12th grade. So that is a big focus. How do you use expected, unexpected behaviors in your academic instruction, and so on and so forth? So from here on out, I'm actually showing you what we're giving our secondary teachers to use within their own classroom with their students. So we first train them using the materials that they can use with their students, and then allow them to modify and adapt these materials to their grade level, their students, because 6th grader is going to need something a little different than a 12th grader. So with our expected and unexpected behaviors, teaching that there are behaviors that are expected, and when we engage in expected behaviors, it makes people calm and happy to be around us. And when we engage in unexpected behaviors and people start getting a little like of the iffies around us, they get a little more uncomfortable. But also teaching that one singular behavior can both be expected or unexpected depending on the context in which that behavior occurs. Screaming out loud in the middle of English class is probably unexpected and is going to make other people uncomfortable and not be around you. Screaming in an emergency is a little more expected. So there's nuances to the behavior. We've made these picture cards for everybody, and one of the activities we do is just take the picture, and is it an expected behavior or is it an unexpected behavior, depending on the context surrounding the behavior in that picture. High school kids love this. They love having kind of debates about the context and coming up with a lot of different scenarios that could be going on in the pictures. It allows them to be thinking a little bit outside of the typical curriculum that's going on. This is a picture of our academy teachers actually being trained. The activity that we did with them was take a situation and list all the expected behaviors in that situation, like going to the dentist office or unexpected behaviors. And again, this is something that they are doing with their students as well. I should mention that the high school teachers that we're working with, they're all co-collaborative teams. Every classroom has a gen ed teacher and a special ed teacher to work on that twice exceptional collaboration. It's the only school in the district that is doing this. So they're really, really special. The second kind of instructional framework that we're teaching is size of the problem. So helping students determine how big of a problem it actually is, and thus their response to that problem should probably match it. So if it's a real tiny like inconvenience, screaming and throwing your chair is not a match, right? That is a huge reaction to a real tiny problem. So we have problems that are small and can be solved by yourself. We have medium problems that you might have to ask a peer, like, hey, I don't have any of the due dates for history. Can you hook me up with that? We have big problems that need more adult support. And then we have an emergency 911, huge problem, right? We have little situation strips that we trained our teachers to, well, the activity we train them with is you take the activity strip and you match it. Is it a small, big, medium, or huge problem? And then what type of reaction should go with that? Which sounds really simple, but when we started doing this, when they started doing it with their students, we had one kiddo who took the strip that said your neighbor's house is on fire and put it into a small problem. He classified that as a small problem. And we said, hey, why do you think that's a small problem? Well, because it's not my house. It doesn't concern me at all, right? Like, peace out. But then we had to explain, well, you know, if your neighbor's house is on fire, your house could catch on fire as well. So is that a small problem, or are we now in the big, huge problem area? So especially with our kiddos with autism, you know, kind of getting out of that myopic, rigid thinking of other things that could be going on. This is a really great activity for them. And here's what it looks like completed. These materials are super easy to make. It took us, you know, just a couple hours to make it for all of the teachers. I have my own set that I carry in my car everywhere I go for my own college students. And then the last instructional framework we use is the zones of regulation. And this goes with the self-management and self-awareness. Are you able to acknowledge what zone you're in terms of how you're feeling physically and emotionally? And are you able to kind of engage in things and behaviors and strategies that can bring you back to the green zone if you start kind of waffling into yellow or red or into the blue zone? So if I'm in the yellow zone, do I need to take a couple of deep breaths to get back to baseline green zone? Or if I'm in the blue zone, do I need to go for a walk to kind of get back to the green zone? We also really emphasize that every zone is okay. It is a spectrum of human emotion and human behavior, and that you're not always going to be in the green zone and you will vacillate throughout the day. However, it's always important to recognize where you are so you can try to get back to the green zone, because we change throughout the day. For example, my daughter missed her alarm this morning. She woke up immediately in the yellow zone, very worried about what time it was and how much time she had ready to get ready, or how much time she had to get ready for school. Talked to her, you know, brought her back down, like, hey, your outfit's already laid out, your homework's already in your homework folder, brought her back down to the green zone. I'm sure things that happened at school that probably put her in the blue zone or yellow zone, depending on, you know, what happens. Junior high, it's always a crapshoot. And then, you know, the day goes on and people just go up and down with the zones, but they're all okay. And we accept them all. So again, we use picture cards for this activity as well. And they try to determine which zone the person in the picture card is. And again, context conversations come in. That is super entertaining and super fun. One thing we do stress a lot, and our academy teachers or high school teachers have totally just taken this as their own, is always asking for explanations for why students make the choices with these activities that they do. Because often it's their explanation of why something, they feel like something's in the blue zone or green zone or big problem, huge problem, that gives us a key to their understanding of why they might be perceiving situations or people or behaviors or emotions or the way that they are. And here is a picture of a completed zones of regulation assignment or activity. But now we get to the fun part. How do you actually infuse this into your core curricular content? So here's an example from an English class, and they were using all of those concepts to graph or track the relationship between two characters, Bill and Albert. And so Bill and Albert's relationship throughout the story went up and down, but there was a general increase of that relationship getting stronger and more concrete as the book went on. Students were able to kind of dig into why maybe their relationship took a dip here in part 5. Is it something that Bill did? Maybe Bill had a unexpected behavior that made Albert kind of shy away from Bill for a little bit. Or maybe Bill had a huge response to something Albert did that really required a small response. But we have, English, we have math, and we have social emotional learning all kind of connected together. And then since one of my teachers was not able to make it, we have this video, and it is a math teacher. I believe she is a 12th grade math teacher, and talking about how she integrates social emotional learning into her instruction.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Stephanie Pease, and I am a special ed teacher for the Academy of Integrated Arts and Technology. We're an integrated model for twice exceptional gifted learners. In this presentation, I'll just give a brief overview of how social emotional instruction is integrated into our program model and the impact it has on our students. To do that, I'll briefly review the structure we have for explicit instruction, a few examples of how we integrate social emotional learning into the classroom, the development of our delivery and instruction, and some of the outcomes we've observed in our student body. Our biggest challenge in high school is time. So when it comes to explicit social emotional instruction, not only is it great to find ways to incorporate it into the curriculum, but we also really wanted to strive to find the time to have a sole focus on the explicit instruction the students really need. We ended up carving out one or two 15-minute sessions a week after school announcements. It wasn't a lot, but we wanted to be as effective with that time as possible. To meet that need, we created SoLabs. SoLab is time dedicated to the students' social and emotional wellness, where the students engage in explicit social emotional instruction and interactive lab time. These labs include everything from planning and scheduling, introduction to mindfulness, the zones of regulation, giving and receiving social feedback, the priority matrix, and the size of the problem model. They're all geared towards targeting the social, emotional, as well as executive functioning needs present in our student population. But as we know, explicit instruction once or twice a week isn't enough. The students need to practice and engage with their newly learned social emotional skills. So in addition to weaving it into curriculum content where we could, such as identifying which literary character is in which zone when, we also found ways to integrate it into classroom management and routine. Our goals are always to make it small and streamlined because time is so limited. So our first strategy takes 0 time from instruction. We do productive and purposeful grouping based on social emotional strengths and needs. On lower stakes assignments where we have more flexibility in our objectives, we'll practice grouping by their social emotional needs as opposed to just academic. This gives all the students, twice exceptional and neurotypical, the opportunity to benefit from the social strengths of their peers. I say this because not only can our 2E students practice reading social cues or engaging in effective collaboration, but we're using the twice exceptional student strengths as well. I found that they're excellent at igniting conversation and discussion with neurotypical students who just need some extra energy in the group to be inspired to share their thoughts. Next, we have in the zone Google Forms. This second strategy we use is one where we've seen success for doing independent work during class time. We developed a super short Google form for a zone of regulation check-in. The students answer 4 basic questions. What zone am I in? What does it feel like? What triggered this zone? And what can I do to help get myself to the green zone? Then we give them 5 minutes to actually go do whatever it is they wrote in their action box. We've seen a general positive response to these forms for a few reasons. One, it's private. So as opposed to when they were younger and they might put markers out on their desks, this is an opportunity for them to share and express what they're going through privately in a form. 2, it gives them some agency. While they always make the best choices for how to use their 5 minutes? Not necessarily, but they have choice. And we've slowly started to see growth in their choices as the year went on. We had one 2E student who constantly struggled with pent-up energy. At the beginning of the year, he would use his time to be on his phone or read or try to do breathing. But as the year went on, he began to use that time and effectively use the time to run around the building multiple times. He would come in much more focused after that. Actually, we saw when given the freedom to go outside, this is kind of like a side note, but when given the freedom to go outside, the kids really used it and they seemed to benefit from that outside time. The third key to the positive response was the actual time that it took for the form. For us teachers, taking 5 minutes a couple times a week before independent work time was manageable. And for the students, we found the brevity of the form made it easy and accessible for them, which kind of leads us to our next point on delivery. Based on student reactions, we're constantly learning how to adjust delivery. In respect to explicit social emotional instruction, we're constantly receiving feedback from the kids. So that can actually vary from love it, hate it, to whatever. And unfortunately, some of those who are most resistant with the whatevers and the hate it, they fall into our top tier. And they're the ones that most need the social emotional intervention. With that in mind, we have and constantly are still adjusting our delivery methods. We found that first and foremost, we need a strong foundation in relationship building. Our learners are unlikely to want to receive much input from us on their social emotional wellness if we feel like a stranger. This is especially challenging during distance learning, but playing games and talking about their interests helps build that relationship. We also found allowing students to have agency in their own social emotional learning process has helped. I've had one student this year where I needed her to propose to me the time management and organization system she wanted to use. What was her plan? Was it the best organization system for her? I don't believe so, no. But after a while, she was more open to my suggestions because she was a part of the process and she was a part of the process of evaluating her own system that she built. Brevity. This is one I learned the hard way. One of the most important. I'm obsessed with Google Forms, the kids less so. And this demonstrates that. We used to have a lengthy introspective reflection form that the students filled out after they had a structured social group time. And look, I got some great information for me. We can see that after 2 weeks of explicit social emotional instruction, they felt more aware of their group members' emotional state during their social time. But after a month, I got heads on desks and sarcastic comments when it came time for the form reflection. They flat out told me that they hated them and they were too long. So that was a bust. But the more brief the assignments that I gave, the more participation and enthusiastic engagement I saw. To quote myself, or for what I always tell them, you can always do anything for a minute. To that very point, using student feedback. With that foundational relationship built, they have had no problem and they have not been shy in telling me how they prefer their social emotional instruction delivered, and it's only helped us help them more effectively. Ultimately, we've seen positive results from the implementations of social emotional strategies in our program. We've seen growth in their social emotional awareness. We had one student who really struggled to establish meaningful friendships because he came on a bit strong and got very attached very quickly to his new friends. So last year, he approached me asking if I could help him respond to a text appropriately because, this is his quote, he wanted to effectively build a relationship. We were then able to use the language from a levels of friendship lesson we had done earlier in the year to help them craft a response. We've seen growth in social emotional vocabulary. Just last week, I had a student proficiently and perfectly identify, describe, and address her most common cognitive distortion. Just the vocabulary of cognitive distortion gave her the communication skills to make sense of what she was experiencing and therefore easier to manage. We've also seen growth in coping strategies. This truly spans across all students, 2E or neurotypical, but we largely had a positive response to the 5-minute zones of regulation activity we discussed. In addition, in addition to students saying it helped and they wanted it to continue, I did have one 2E student who tends to have these big frustrated outbursts. He told me one day, "Please, I'm in the red zone. Leave me alone for 5 minutes." Now, he half yelled it at me, but I'm counting that as a win because he left, came back later, feeling a little bit better and ready to talk it out. Last but not least, we've seen a growth in their confidence. We've seen this in their ability to reach out to teachers to self-advocate unprompted. They're sharing out what their needs are with more specific social emotional vocabulary. And our hope is that all of these skills serve them well beyond high school. That's all for now. Thank you so much.
All right, I got to give props to that teacher for doing that very last minute for us today. All right, so that is social emotional learning, and now I want to talk a little bit about how we are helping them with the executive functioning instruction. First, teachers are very upfront with executive functioning, naming it, acknowledging it, and normalizing it, and trying to make it something that, you know, almost everybody on this planet has some sort of executive functioning need, whether it is a social executive functioning need or a cognitive executive functioning need. But if we talk about it and can name it and acknowledge that it exists, then we are better able to instruct it and work on areas that we need to work on. So I talked about cognitive emotional, but yes, teachers are differentiating between the cognitive executive functioning, so what we are actually doing, planning, organizing, time management, versus the emotional aspect, what we think. So impulse control, quick to anger, those types of things. This is from a history class. They have this in their room, and every month there is a different kind of focus on whether it's self-control, organization, planning, time management, so on and so forth. But these are constantly addressed within their instruction. Especially with history, they can use a lot of these types of ideas and talk about how historical leaders in the past may or may not have had some of these executive functioning skills that were super good, or maybe, you know, left a little to be desired. They do set reflection goals, and they do have reflections and set goals in terms of where they think they need to grow around these executive functioning skills. They're also helped to recognize their challenges and where there are opportunities to grow. And here are some sample reflective questions that these teachers pose to their students. So out of all these executive function skills, what do you think you already have mastery of? Or at the end of the year, what do you think you have mastered during this year? At the beginning of the year, what are 2 areas that you think you need the most instruction in, or do you need the most support with? And then what has been successful for you as a student? These 2 teachers are also very into habits of mind in teaching these 16 different habits of mind. They're also 12th grade teachers, and they're teaching these habits of mind in relation to what does that mean for when you go to college, if you should choose to go to college. This summer, we're actually doing a summer institute where we're bringing these students onto Cal Lutheran University's campus. It is a 3D, hopefully it's 3D if they're actually on campus. It is a 3-day 3-day event. We're going to take them to the disability office, take them to dorms so they see how big dorms typically are or not. We're going to take them to the cafeteria, how to use a food plan, who you need to talk to, what a syllabus is, all of those things. But they've already started, these teachers, integrating these 16 habits in mind into what the students are going to be doing this summer. Right. So you need to, as a student, be flexible in your thinking, especially if you live in a dorm and you have a roommate, right? You need to be flexible with your schedule. You need to be flexible with your thinking. You need to just be flexible in general. They're also teaching a priority matrix. So what activities are of high importance and need to be done with some level of urgency? They have a due date that is coming up ASAP. And what is maybe not as important, and there's a little bit more time for students to actually get something completed. This is helping students prioritize and manage all of the workload that they are having in secondary environments. It is also going to help them manage what they have when they go to college, or if they get a job, right? Because we all have an extensive to-do list in our areas of employment. 2 other teachers interviewed their students. Well, they did a qualitative and quantitative kind of exit survey at the end of the year, asking their students, do you think that you had any improvement in terms of habits of mind and executive functioning skills that we worked on this year? And the majority of students said yes, or somewhat. We did see an improvement in our habits of mind or executive functioning. And then on the qualitative side, we had some of these quotes pulled out. So they thought that the lessons that they used, that they were able to start looking at things from different points of view. They were better able to manage their behavior. I really like the last one. I learned not to argue pointlessly with everyone. I'm sure we wish that all the adults in our life could take that on. But so it was really good, positive feedback directly from the students to their teachers. And good for the teachers to know that they were utilizing these strategies in a really effective way. I'm going to call out our 2 AP history teachers because they are really working on executive functioning in terms of passing the AP history test and giving students all the supports and all the graphic organizers and everything to help ease that process. So they've created vocabulary and sentence starter types of things. So when they are reviewing documents to write about, the language in the documents or things to look for within the documents, and the words that they can use to then talk about what they're looking at within documents. I'm so thankful I was never in AP history. Also a graphic organizer to help kind of organize their writing prompts and the writing that they have to do for the AP history exam. So having, the main thesis with 3 supporting arguments, and then documents to support those arguments, and so on. So that's that point of the day. So documents to support those arguments as well. And then these soapstone questions. So soapstone stands for speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, subject, and tone, and things that they need to look at when they are reviewing historical writings and documents. All right. Now, these teachers did an exit kind of survey at the end of the year. Their students really felt that they had made an improvement in their writing with the use of these tools. That's a pretty high number, and it was really, really exciting. And these teachers were through the roof excited that they felt that they were doing something better for their students. It's always hard to know when you're teaching high school, like what the students are really feeling about their improvement or their instruction. And so this was really positive for these teachers. The last thing I'm going to talk about is this social cafe, and it is a after-school club run by some of our teachers, and they invite kids from their classes, so our twice exceptional students, but they also reach out to the broader population within the school. So they're students who are not in the gifted academy as well. I don't want to say non-gifted because there's probably gifted people still out there that have not been identified, but it's an after school club to work on social skills and social interactions, regardless of, 2E designation or gifted designation. Their tagline is keep an open mind. This is not something we planned for. This wasn't a goal of our project. This is something that just organically came out of the work that we were doing with these teachers. And one of them one day said, I want to do this club. And it started with, 5 students, and now it is 30 students coming once a week after school when there's so many other things that they could be doing, but they come, they work, they grow, they've developed friendships, which, for some of our 2E students can be very difficult. They They'd go out in the quad and try to recruit during lunch. Actually, it's going on right now. She started by teaching social skills by showing the first season of The Real World New York and having them dissect some of the interactions that happened in that show. She fought really hard for her administration to allow her to show these video clips, but she was very persistent and was very successful. And that is one of the teaching modalities that she uses to teach social skills and where things can go very wrong, very fast, in a very authentic way. The friendships that have come out of this have been amazing. And if they have to cancel a meeting, students are really, really disappointed because they really have made some strong bonds. And this is a picture of our 2E, gifted, non-gifted, everybody together. And I think that is the end of my presentation. So I will open it up to questions now.
So we'll give you a couple options for
Okay.
asking questions if you have them. If you want to use the raise hand feature, turn your camera on. We'll try and prevent this from being Zoom chaos if possible. So any questions, I'll take them in the chat and pass them on to Dr. Spence. Or if you want to unmute, we'll try and do this in an orderly fashion.
You don't want chaos on a Thursday afternoon?
No, I like to slide into Fridays simply as possible. So I will do my best to continue modeling wait time, but any questions?
Easy bunch.
Yeah, all right. So we've got one. So from the chat, the teachers you work with are obviously willing participants. How would you engage someone less willing? Always the work with systems change and any implementation research, right?
Yes. And I can tell you that we work with over the course of the project, we've worked with something around 200 teachers, and not all 200 of those teachers were willing participants. And I'll just use the academy as an example. Really, it became kind of a peer pressure situation, right? So you work very strongly with the teachers who are excited and engaged and willing to do this work. And it's not that you exclude those other teachers, they're still invited to come, but when they start seeing some of the output that these teachers were getting with their students, then they started to slowly come on board. We opened the academy with 30 teachers, so 15 special ed teachers and 15 general education teachers. And out of those 30, I would say there's a good solid five, who were just digging in their heels, didn't want to do the additional work, didn't want to do anything. Those 5 teachers, honestly, 3 of them have left. They left the academy. There's nothing we can do about that. The other 2 are now on board. So they were paired with a really strong co-teacher. They saw all the positive things coming out with their students, and now they are fully on board after 6 years. So in short, patience and persistence are kind of what helps people move along, because you can't force it. You can't force people to change their minds.
Thank you. So I've got 2 more questions in the chat. I will go in the order they came in. So what is your experience with using mindfulness in your program? So mindfulness exercises.
There are teachers who use mindfulness, and I would say if you believe in mindfulness and it is like a strong part of who you are and it's authentic for you, it's very effective when you use it with your students. Where I find it not to be effective is when it's an inauthentic process, right, or practice. So if you are not really into mindfulness, but you're trying to teach your students to be into mindfulness, they catch on very quickly that this is kind of a BS thing for you. But then you also have to recognize, if we're on the spectrum of how we incorporate mindfulness into our toolkit, our students are also going to be on the spectrum of how they want to introduce mindfulness. So the way I look at using mindfulness and the way I've seen it be effective is that it is just one of many tools that students have access to. So if you are not able to teach it, then maybe you can bring in someone else to teach it, and then you've provided an authentic tool for your students to choose to use.
Perfect. So questions are rolling in, just like you said, a little bit of peer pressure, right? Once one comes in, or some people buy into it, more come. So the next question is, have you done a level of use or have you done and level of use assessments?
We have not.
All right, that was easy. Next question. What are the implications for school environments that are not specifically twice exceptional? You mentioned that not everyone is on board. Many twice exceptional students are 1 or 2 students in the classroom.
Yeah. So when we are working with our elementary participants or elementary school teachers who don't necessarily have a twice exceptional or gifted or non-gifted environments to differentiate, we're really looking at how you can take these concepts and scaffold them or scale them down for every single student. We recognize fully, I was a teacher for 10 years. I very much recognize that time, resources, administrative support all play a factor in your ability to do certain parts of your job. So we can't solve all of those problems. Well, I'm reading the question again to make sure I'm actually answering it because I went off on a tangent. You mentioned that not everyone is learning. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that question, Megan? Do you feel?
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually studying I'm a doctoral student, and that's my focus. And I found that a lot of twice exceptional students have negative school experiences, and some have positive, and that teachers can be a factor for a negative or positive. So I was just kind of wondering, because not every student who's twice exceptional has the opportunity to go to a school that is for twice exceptional students. How do you, or how would you go about teaching, school-wide staff, or what are ideas for kind of reaching all teachers to understand the social emotional needs and implications of, not necessarily your specific intervention or what you're doing, but being open to working on social emotional learning. Did that help?
I think so. So you're trying to get ideas of how we can get people to broaden their mindset of what they need to teach in the classroom and take on social emotional learning as an instructional tool.
Right, for all students and for the twice exceptional students in their classrooms.
So when we go to elementary school sites and we kind of bring this training with us, we do preface it that it is not just for any specific population. It is for all students, and that it will benefit every student, and therefore it will benefit your instruction. When we start talking about how to move these interventions or strategies into what they're already doing in the classroom, and we help them see how to do that, that's when we start getting more buy-in. Because sometimes, well, a good majority of the time, the initial response is, don't put more on my plate, which is understandable, right? Teachers are very overloaded. So how can we make it easier for you to do this thing we want you to do? And if we give you time, if we give you ideas, if we have peer groups that work together and spark ideas with each other, then we can start seeing how it's not necessarily making more time for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so what you shared is something that you're teaching to schools, whole schools, not just implementing in the special academy.
We have, yes, within LE.
So following up Megan's question, I think we have an easy segue into the next question, talking about how much time or additional time did it take to onboard teachers to the program in the beginning?
That was a spectrum. Some people walked in the first day like, I've been ready for 10 years. Tell me what I need. And then other teachers, again, it took a couple years. I will say that many teachers have given us the feedback that they wish they had this knowledge when they were first year teachers, that they wish they had these tools when they first stepped into the classroom. But yeah, we've had everything additional time from 2 months to 2 years, depending on the individual, and also looking at why they're resisting. So everyone has a different reason for their why.
Thank you. So again, those are all the questions that are in the chat. I do want to give a second to see if anyone else has any questions that they'd like to put in the chat, or if they want to be brave like Megan and join us on camera.
Hi, I'm Diane. I have more questions about getting teachers on board. So did you work with teachers individually? Did you have group meetings? Yes, all yes.
Both, yes. So we do monthly meetings. They're not required, but we're there every month. I used to be in person, now it's on Zoom. We do have one of my LA Unified counterparts is one of our coaches, so she will go into the classroom to support as well. So we do have both. One thing that we don't do is force anyone to take our help, because then we're really going to get pushback, right? So we offer those opportunities. The monthly meetings started out smaller, and now almost every teacher comes. So I think that kind of pure, like, hey, they gave us this resource, I can't wait to do this. And so then people started coming.
And then
sorry, I was jumping ahead.
No, thank you. That was really helpful. I just moved to California from Colorado and worked on a different statewide project, but I'm just curious of your process. Thanks.
Thank you.
And so Megan put a question in the chat that I was going to ask, but do you have a curriculum or set of materials, links, probably anything that you'd like to share? So if people wanted to learn more,
I can send you the oh my God, references for those, the zones and the expected unexpected behavior with Michelle Garcia Winner. So all of her social emotional curriculum. And then Kruppers is the size of the problem, but I can send you, Matt, if you want, like the actual specific links. I don't know if you can share that with people, or
I absolutely can.
do you want me to do that? Can I do that after, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So what I will promise to everyone is that when this recording is posted on our site, any materials and such will be linked there, as well as for those of you that registered for this. I believe there was an email collection there, so I can share that out for everyone that registered and participated as well. So I'll do my last call here for questions, and then Dr. Spence, if there's any final words of wisdom that you'd like to impart with us. If there are no further questions, I'll leave the floor to you before we close out this afternoon.
I don't think me and wisdom should ever be used in the same sentence together, but I don't have any last words.
Okay, so for questions, we'll say going once, going twice, and that'll be that. So I do want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Again, I invite you to go to calstatecec.org, our website, where you can find announcements for future webinars, future events, as well as the recordings and materials for previous webinars like this one. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Spence. It was wonderful to spend the hour with you and very informative. So again, I want to thank you all and wish you all a good rest of your evening and happy long weekend coming up.
Thank you, guys.
See you, everyone.